In the cafeteria, Chloe, my childhood friend, had saved me a spot. When she saw I had my food, she winked, signaling for me to come over. Any other time, I would have refused, holding out to eat with my first love, the campus queen. But now, I obediently carried my tray over to her. Chloe's lips curved into a small smile as she waved me over. No one's sitting here, come on. Her voice held a strange hint of anticipation. The guy sitting next to her looked like his eyes were about to pop out of his head. Whoa, did I hear that right? Chloe, the ice queen who keeps everyone at arm's length, with her usual world-weary, icy expression, is actually smiling at a guy like that? And her voice is so gentle. Did she take the wrong meds today? Under the confused and shocked stares of the other students, I slowly sat down across from Chloe. I wasn't sure if it was my imagination, but the person across from me seemed to be in a particularly good mood. I didn't dwell on it, just lowered my head and quietly ate my noodle soup, trying my best to ignore the astonished looks from everyone. Just then, Chloe suddenly spoke up. Why didn't you get a pudding cup? I glanced at the table and saw that every other student had a pudding cup on their tray. It seemed they were giving one to everyone, but I was the only one without. I chewed on my noodles and said nonchalantly, they ran out. The last one was gone right when I got there. Then I went back to eating. My luck had never been great after all. Suddenly, a delicate hand slid a pudding cup across the table in front of me. I froze for a second, then looked up. The cafeteria was noisy, but Chloe's gaze was fixed on me as she spoke slowly. You can have mine. I don't really feel like eating it anyway. I stared at the pudding cup she had pushed over, a strange feeling stirring inside me as I said softly, thanks. The next second, a cool, elegant figure entered my peripheral vision. I felt a pull and looked over. Isabella Vance was standing not far away, her gaze locked directly on me, her expression as cold as frost, as if the very air around her had dropped to freezing. 3 or 4 other girls trailed behind her. One of them saw me and sneered, her eyes full of disdain. Why aren't you coming over to eat with our queen, Isabella? The mocking words hit me, and my hand froze midair. I recognized her, a trust fund kid named Tiffany. She was a spoiled, academically challenged princess who only got into Kingston University because her family donated a few buildings. Back in our freshman year of high school, Tiffany had pursued me. After I politely turned her down, Tiffany had a complete meltdown, constantly putting me down in front of Isabella, calling me a country bumpkin who didn't even know designer brands and whose poor background made me unworthy of Isabella. At the same time, another girl with Isabella noticed me. In a lazy tone, she said, hurry up and get over here. Without you, there's no one to get our utensils for us. Through it all, Isabella never said a word, simply assuming as a matter of course that I would come over. She never defended me either, just letting her friends belittle me as they pleased. Beside me, Chloe's entire body tensed, her beautiful eyes glaring coldly at Isabella. I gave Chloe a small wave to calm her down, then took a deep breath and looked at Isabella, my voice calm but firm. I won't be joining you guys anymore. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough for everyone nearby to hear. A wave of shock and disbelief spread through the students. Almost everyone at Kingston University knew that a guy named Ethan Chase followed Isabella Vance around like a lost puppy. He'd been chasing her from high school all the way to college, a picture of absolute devotion. So how could he suddenly have a change of heart? Tiffany's jaw dropped, her face a mask of disbelief. Her voice shot up several decibels. What did you just say? I kept my eyes downcast and repeated what I had said. I won't be joining you guys anymore. The moment the words left my mouth, an icy frost seemed to settle in Isabella's eyes. Her face darkened, and her voice was cold and commanding, leaving no room for argument as she ordered, word by word, Ethan, come here. But I remained in my seat, showing no intention of moving. Isabella's friends were completely stunned, looking at each other in confusion. None of them had expected Ethan to actually refuse. Had he lost his mind, or was this some new tactic to play hard to get? Isabella's cold eyes stared daggers at me. After a moment, she turned and left without another glance, as if nothing had happened. Once they were completely gone, I finally let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. But the confrontation with Isabella and her friends had ruined my appetite, making my lunch taste like cardboard. I slumped in my seat, head down, silently poking at the food in my bowl with my fork. Sensing the tense atmosphere, one of the girls eating with us tried to lighten the mood. Chloe, you know this handsome guy? Chloe broke into a radiant smile and said earnestly, let me formally introduce you. This is Ethan, he's my... She deliberately drew out the last word. My eyelid twitched, and my heart gave a sudden, painful squeeze. Everyone at the table perked up their ears, their eyes shining with anticipation and curiosity. Chloe paused for effect before adding, childhood sweetheart. He's 2 months older than me, the boy next door I grew up with. The girls' faces filled with envy, their hearts aching with jealousy. Damn it, why didn't they have a handsome childhood sweetheart like that? Chloe ignored the teasing glances from around the table, a slight smile playing on her lips. Her roommate Maya spoke up. Ethan, if you're Chloe's childhood sweetheart, then by extension, you're our childhood sweetheart too, right? Her enthusiasm was almost overwhelming. My face was a canvas of question marks. Can you really round up like that? The other girls started chiming in. Ethan, that's a really nice name. Yeah, it sounds like a name from a novel. Ha ha ha. I couldn't help but laugh as the meal went on, realizing how much better the atmosphere was eating with Chloe and her friends. Her friends were so genuine and warm, unlike Isabella's clique of rich kids who were always ordering me around and finding fault with everything I did, forcing me to pretend I didn't understand their passive-aggressive comments. The contrast made me realize just how exhausting it had all been. Meanwhile, Isabella's mood seemed to have hit rock bottom. Throughout their meal, no one at her table dared to speak, terrified of setting her off. Behind her, Tiffany muttered maliciously, Well, look at Ethan being so fickle. Now he's latched onto Chloe." As she finished speaking, Isabella abruptly stopped walking, her brows knitted together, her expression turning incredibly sour. A sudden clap of thunder echoed across the sky. A moment later, lightning split the clouds, and a downpour began without warning. Students everywhere opened their umbrellas, complaining about the fickle weather. Tiffany walked beside Isabella, holding an umbrella over her, and scoffed. "I get it now. Ethan's just playing hard to get. It's pathetic." Another girl chimed in with a snort. "You think he can keep it up? I bet he'll come crawling back within a week." Tiffany shook her head. "A week? I give him 2 days tops." Just then, Isabella stopped in her tracks, her expression freezing. Her friends followed her gaze and saw a boy and a girl in the distance, sharing a black umbrella. Their shoulders pressed close as they looked at each other and smiled like a couple in the honeymoon phase. The heavy rain created a hazy, romantic filter around them, making the scene look intimate and tender. As everyone looked closer, their eyes widened in recognition. Wasn't that Ethan and Chloe? After a moment, Tiffany narrowed her eyes. "Wow, just wow. He's really committing to the act, putting on a full show. His methods are quite clever. Isabella, don't you fall for it." Everyone knew how much Ethan liked Isabella, how he had chased her for so many years. Seeing that he was getting nowhere, he was probably resorting to these little tricks. They all came from wealthy families. They had seen these kinds of cheap tactics a million times. Isabella stood frozen, her gaze as sharp as ice, her face darker than the storm clouds overhead. After a moment, she turned and walked away without a word. Tiffany and the others hurried to keep up. The rain began to fall even harder. Chloe's dorm was quite a distance from the cafeteria, and in the opposite direction of mine. Seeing that she didn't have an umbrella, I offered to walk her back. Chloe pressed close to me, her body practically glued to my side. Noticing this, I extended my arm to her, my voice a low murmur. "Hold on to me." Chloe paused, looking up at me with a hint of confusion in her eyes. "What?" I looked at her seriously and repeated, "Hold my arm. The rain's heavy, it'll be easier to walk together. Don't you girls do this all the time?" Chloe lowered her head without a word, but inside, she was screaming. "Oh my God, you idiot, you even said it's something girls do with each other. When do you see male and female classmates walking arm in arm?" Just then, a thought seemed to cross my mind, and I let out a soft chuckle. "When we were kids, you used to cling to my arm and neck, and I couldn't shake you off. You'd threaten to strangle me and peel my skin off. Remember that?" Hearing this, Chloe looked up and shot me a playful glare. "That was when we were kids." Perhaps genuinely afraid of getting soaked, she gave a soft edge and, as if possessed, reached out and took my arm, pressing herself tightly against me. The proximity brought her scent with it, a sweet fragrance that seemed to envelop me. So close, we were so close. I blinked, suddenly realizing the umbrella was tilted, angled over her head. Chloe suddenly spoke up. "Your umbrella is crooked, you're going to get wet." I snapped back to reality and mumbled an "Oh, as long as you're dry, it's fine." I paused, then added casually, "Besides, I like walking in the rain." The moment I said it, the scene felt strangely familiar. The next second, a sharp pain shot through my head. My thoughts became a chaotic mess, a buzzing sound filled my ears, and all my strength vanished, causing me to lean heavily against Chloe. It felt like memories from a past life were flooding back. In my past life, on the gloomy evening of my 23rd birthday, I finally received a birthday message from Isabella. My heart pounded with anticipation as I opened the chat. The next moment, I felt as if I'd been plunged into ice water. "He's back in the country. I have to go pick him up." The moment the cold message appeared, each word stabbed at my eyes. My face went rigid, my gaze turned vacant, and it felt like a giant hand was squeezing my heart. It was the eldest son of the Quinn family, Isabella's childhood friend, handsome, wealthy, and her social equal. Even though I knew Isabella didn't actually like him, that this was just about a business partnership with the Quinns, the message still devastated me, a bitter taste spreading through my chest. A loud clap of thunder roared, and the sky opened up in a torrential downpour. Raindrops hammered mercilessly against my face. The next second, a red car with blinding headlights sped towards me, so close I could almost feel it. I froze, my face pale, my throat dry, my vision blurring. In that instant, someone grabbed me from behind, holding me tight, and sprinted forward, narrowly dodging the red car. My head spun, and I saw a familiar face right in front of me. I was stunned, my voice choked with emotion. "It's Chloe." The air seemed to freeze, and for a moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. Chloe's face was tense, her arm wrapped around my waist as she stood there, taking a deep breath, looking like she wanted to say something but couldn't. After a long silence, she finally let go, her voice a little hoarse. "Long time no see." My eyes were red as I replied, "Long time no see." After I had gotten together with Isabella, I hadn't spoken to Chloe in a very long time. We hadn't seen each other at all since graduation. Chloe picked up the black umbrella from the ground and held it over my head. "My concert just ended, and I happened to be passing by." She paused, her voice dry as she whispered a restrained blessing in my ear. In that moment, the tears I had been holding back finally fell. I had waited all day, full of hope, for a message from Isabella that never came, only to hear the words from Chloe, whom I hadn't seen in years. "Happy birthday, Ethan." This memory was clearer and more detailed than any I'd had in my dreams. The dizziness slowly faded, replaced by an indescribable feeling in my heart. The emotions of my past life surged up, and I felt a sting in my nose as I looked at Chloe. The Chloe of today, a college freshman, and the Chloe who would become a national superstar, magically overlapped in this moment. All the bitter emotions from my past life washed over me, drowning me until I could barely breathe. Chloe reached out a slender, delicate hand and gently wiped the raindrops from my face. "What's wrong? You can talk to me about anything, don't just carry it all by yourself, okay?" I nodded and said softly, "I'm fine." Chloe's lips parted as if to speak, but she hesitated and said nothing. She lowered her long lashes, hiding the fleeting shadow of disappointment in her eyes. "Fine. Even when you look this miserable, you're still defending that Vance girl. Just how much do you like her?" I shook my head. "I don't like her anymore." My voice was so quiet it was almost a whisper, but Chloe's fingers stiffened, and she stopped walking. "What did you say?" I looked at her and said, with complete sincerity, "I don't like Isabella Vance anymore." Each word hit her ears with the force of a raindrop slamming into the pavement. Time seemed to stand still. Chloe's heart suddenly leaped, and the corners of her mouth turned up slightly. "Congratulations on finally opening your eyes." At the same time, a secret joy bloomed within her. "And congratulations to me," she thought, "for finally reaching this moment." After walking Chloe to her dorm, I returned to my own and headed straight for the shower. Once I had my emotions in check, I pulled a journal from my drawer. Taped to the first page was a Polaroid of Isabella on stage during a school festival, sitting at a piano, looking ethereal, cool, and elegant. I would never forget it. Under the brilliant spotlight, the sight of her playing the piano was captivating, and I fell for her in that single glance. From then on, I started paying attention to her, watching her from afar, but I was always too cautious to approach. Isabella was the heiress of a powerful family, the center of everyone's universe, someone completely out of my reach. I was just a speck of dust, dull and insignificant, until one day, I was caught in a downpour on my way to rehearsal, and a luxury car suddenly pulled up beside me. The window rolled down to reveal Isabella, her eyes as exquisite as glass, meeting mine. Her voice was cool. "Get in." The rumor was that no male student had ever been in Isabella's car, nor had any guy managed to get her number, but I was the one exception. Perhaps that unique, one-of-a-kind treatment created an illusion, leading me to dream a beautiful dream. After the festival, I happened to overhear some girls asking Isabella what kind of guys she liked. Her calm voice drifted from behind the door, proactive, enthusiastic, and obedient. So, I made up my mind to muster all my confidence and courage to pursue her openly. Looking back now, it's laughable. If Isabella didn't like me, she could have rejected me as decisively as she did all the other guys. But every time I was about to give up, Isabella would do something to give me that special treatment again, offering me a sliver of hope. It was because of that sliver of hope that I offered her my whole heart, full of passion, only to have it doused with ice water, leaving me bruised and broken. Real life isn't a novel. How could a poor kid ever win over a rich heiress? With that thought, I tossed the journal into the trash. Then I unlocked my phone and, without a moment's hesitation, deleted and blocked Isabella and all of her friends. It was time for a clean slate, I would not make the same mistakes again. Lying in bed with the covers pulled up, I felt a sense of lightness and freedom for the first time. I drifted off to sleep, my dreams intermittently pierced by memories of my past life. A beautiful, melodic voice gently echoed in my mind. The memory was jumbled and hazy, but I could vaguely make out a familiar woman looking at me, saying with great sincerity, "You were never a speck of dust. You are the brightest, most brilliant star." The next afternoon, my roommate Leo and I both signed up for the basketball tournament. On the court, Leo looked at me, astonished, and whispered, "You're not messing with me, are you? You really don't like Isabella anymore? Weren't you supposed to help her with her piano maintenance today? I thought you were going to skip the game." I nodded and looked at him. "It's for real. Cross my heart." Leo lifted his chin. "I never liked that woman, but since you were so into her, I kept my mouth shut. From now on, though, I'm letting it all out. She walks around with that cold, deadpan expression all day, like a walking refrigerator. And her friends, the way they're so passive-aggressive to your face, it's a masterclass in snobbery." Leo spoke with such passion that his eyes were practically shooting fire. "See? Am I right or am I right?" I nodded without saying anything. Just then, a commotion erupted among the guys around us. "No way, the campus queen Isabella is actually at a basketball game. Did she just glance in our direction?" I turned and glanced at her. The game was an interdepartmental match between the economics and information science departments of Kingston. But the audience's attention was fixed on the stands, where two of the campus's most beautiful girls were seen together, instantly capturing the gazes of countless guys. Not far away, Isabella met my eyes, and her icy expression softened slightly. The girls behind her noticed me looking, and a flicker of contempt appeared in their eyes, their faces saying, "I knew it. See? I told you he couldn't keep up the act for long. He was just waiting for Isabella to show up." Tiffany had a smug grin on her face. "Of course, after the game, he'll definitely come running over like a puppy." The next second, Leo nudged my shoulder. "Hey, Ethan, isn't that your childhood friend over there?" Just as I was about to turn my head, the girls in the stands started craning their necks and screaming, "Oh my God, Julian's here. He's so handsome, even hotter than my last celebrity crush. He's gorgeous." I didn't have class this afternoon, so I just grabbed a random seat. "I can't believe Julian showed up. He's unreal. Hey, that guy from the InfoSci department is really cute too. I didn't realize this year's freshmen were so high quality. Who do you think is better? Only a child would choose." Tiffany's eyes lit up as she watched Julian. "Is there even a question? Obviously, Julian is better. He's had professional coaching since he was a kid and was even on a youth development team in middle school. He's amazing." Beside her, Isabella gave a slight nod, her fair hands gently clutching a bottle of spring water. Then, she shifted her gaze from Julian and looked over at me. The crowd was so loud and chaotic that I couldn't find where Chloe was sitting. As I scanned the stands, my eyes accidentally met Isabella's again. After only a couple of seconds, I looked away and continued searching for Chloe. In the stands, Chloe froze for a moment. She followed my line of sight and saw only one person sitting there, Isabella. Chloe's lips tightened into a thin line. "Why isn't he looking at me? He's looking at Isabella again. That jerk Ethan saying he didn't like her anymore. He's a liar." Seeing this, she felt the very air around her turn bitter. Then again, after all these years, she should be used to it. Her roommate Maya noticed her expression and asked, "What's wrong, Chloe? Are you upset?" Chloe remained silent, but in the next instant, my gaze found her with perfect accuracy. Our eyes met. Chloe was taken aback for a second. Then she raised her arm in a wave, her eyes curving into crescents, two playful dimples appearing as she broke into a brilliant smile, as radiant as a blooming flower. She mouthed the words, "Go for it." Seeing her, the corners of my mouth lifted. It felt like brilliant fireworks were exploding in my chest. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would burst, and my face was burning. I could only manage a small cough and a nod, then pretended to casually look around, making 1,000 fidgety movements to hide the chaos inside me. The whistle blew and the game began. I moved quickly, immediately getting control of the ball. From the stands, Chloe watched with a smile as the tall, handsome boy on the court moved like a hawk, calculating and confident, every action exuding a rugged, roguish charm. The basketball seemed glued to his hand, obeying his every command as it sailed smoothly into the hoop. He started with a three-pointer, instantly electrifying the crowd. Chloe's eyes were glued to the ball, which seemed to have a life of its own, zipping between players before obediently returning to my hands. The ball traced another perfect arc, like a shooting star, and swished through the net. The game was intense, with both teams neck and neck. After each basket, the crowd erupted in cheers and applause, a dizzying spectacle where it was hard to tell who they were rooting for. Julian, on the other hand, seemed completely unfazed, as if he didn't care about winning or losing. He effortlessly sank a basket with perfect form, his slender, upright posture giving him an air of refined elegance. Ah, he scored. The surrounding students cheered, and some girls blushed. I've seen Julian sing and give speeches but never play basketball. How does he manage to look so cool and sophisticated even when he's playing sports? Julian's expressionless gaze swept over the swooning girls, then suddenly paused on Chloe. Her lovely, almond-shaped eyes were curved into charming crescents, and she radiated an aura of gentle innocence. Julian's heart skipped a beat. He had never seen a girl so pure and vibrant, but her attention wasn't on him. Julian frowned slightly and followed her gaze to me. At that moment, I was smiling and waving at Chloe, completely oblivious to the two other cold stares fixed on me. In the stands, Isabella's hands were clenched so tightly that her nails were digging into her palms. The game on the court continued. Julian shot a look at a teammate, who narrowed his eyes and immediately started subtly boxing me in, intentionally getting in my personal space, using his arms, legs, and shoulders to block my offense. It was malicious obstruction, but he was careful to stay just on the edge of fouling. This was a common dirty trick of theirs, but of course they wouldn't have Julian do it himself. I had already noticed their subtle moves and easily shook them off. Soon, the game was nearing its end. The golden afternoon sun draped over me. The ball left my hands like a shooting star, and every eye in the gym followed its path. But when it reached the hoop, it seemed to get stubborn, spinning around the rim 2 or 3 times, refusing to drop in. Chloe's heart pounded in her chest, her whole body tense as she silently prayed for the ball to go in. The next second, the ball dropped cleanly through the net. The game was decided. The entire gym erupted in a roar of cheers. The information science department had won by 2 points. A huge weight lifted from Chloe's chest, and she let out a long sigh of relief, her clear, beautiful eyes sparkling. But she couldn't shake the feeling that 2 pairs of eyes were fixed on her, one gaze intense and the other icy cold. Yet when she looked up, no one seemed to be watching her. Just then, Maya suddenly thrust an unopened bottle of water into Chloe's hands. Here. Chloe looked up, bewildered, her small head full of big questions. Maya giggled. Go on, take it to your childhood sweetheart. With that, she clutched her stomach and rushed off to the bathroom. Nature calls, and it's a big one. Don't wait for me. Chloe stood there with a dazed expression, looking down at the water bottle in her hand, then up at the boy dribbling a ball in the distance. He didn't seem to be looking at that other girl anymore. So Chloe quietly made a decision. At that moment, I was thirsty after the game, and my eyes kept drifting unintentionally toward a certain little bunny. The little bunny was holding a water bottle and slowly making her way toward me. It was strangely adorable. I swallowed hard, an unidentifiable feeling bubbling up inside me. Leo, drenched in sweat and exhausted, said casually, I'll go grab some water for you. I'm dying of thirst. I immediately refused. No thanks. I'm not thirsty. Seeing that I didn't have a drink, a few girls nearby fixed their bangs, walked up, and politely offered me water with sweet smiles. Hey, you're a really great player. Want some water? Can I get your number? I'm in the info side department too. I rejected them without a second thought. Sorry, no thanks. I didn't even get a good look at their faces before I pushed through the crowd and started walking toward Chloe. Suddenly, an elegant figure appeared in front of me. I didn't see who it was clearly and assumed it was her, so I instinctively reached out my left hand, a smile on my face, while scratching my head with my right. Isabella stood before me holding a bottle of water, her red lips curved in a triumphant smirk, exuding the proud confidence of a queen. As her slender right hand offered the bottle, I finally saw who it was and quickly pulled my hand back, my brain completely short-circuiting, at a loss for words. About 15 feet away, Chloe stopped in her tracks, clutching the water bottle tightly to her chest. A bitter smile touched her lips before she turned and walked toward the exit. Sorry about that. My hand slipped. I offered a quick explanation and hurriedly turned around, but all I saw was the back of Chloe as she walked out the door. After dinner, I returned to my dorm. The moment I opened the door, my roommates all turned to look at me with knowing expressions. I asked, a little confused, what's with the serious faces? The next second, Adrian looked at me and asked, Ethan, be honest with me. Are you really over Isabella? I nodded without saying a word. The fact that I had been chasing Isabella was common knowledge, not a secret. I couldn't imagine how many people had been laughing at me behind my back. Adrian looked up, holding a few tarot cards, and said with a serious expression, Actually, I did a tarot and astrology reading for you and Isabella a long time ago, but you seemed so hopeful back then, so I kept it to myself. Do you want to know now? Adrian had always been obsessed with divination and mysticism, constantly messing with tarot cards and astrological charts in our room. I nodded and looked at him. Go ahead, tell me. Adrian sighed. The result was that if you two got together, it wouldn't end well. It would even seriously harm your career. After a moment's thought, he added, but my readings aren't 100% accurate. It's all pretty mystical, so it's up to you whether you believe it. I pressed my lips together and said, I believe you. Suddenly, Leo leaned in curiously. Bro, do a reading for me too. Will I find a girlfriend this freshman year? When will I meet my future wife? Adrian happily agreed, shuffled the cards thoroughly, and did a reading for him. Leo rubbed his hands together nervously. So, what's the verdict? Adrian looked at the cards, pursed his lips, and patted Leo's shoulder consolingly. Buddy, it looks like you're going to be single for a while longer. At his words, Leo clutched his heart in mock despair and dramatically pretended to slit his wrist with a potato chip. They say if you don't find someone freshman year, you'll be single all through college. Looks like I'm destined to be alone forever. Just then, I spoke up again. Adrian, can you do a reading for one more person for me? Adrian nodded. It's Chloe, right? Give me her information. A few moments later, Adrian's brow furrowed deeper and deeper. Hold on, let me try some other divination methods for this one. He brought out everything. Tortoise shells, bamboo sticks, playing cards, astrological charts, a mix of Eastern and Western methods. After more than 10 minutes, his expression grew increasingly solemn. Ethan, you and Chloe are fated to be together. You're a perfect match. And there's a very high probability that you were together in your past lives, are meant to be in this one, and will be in the next. After that, my 3 roommates cornered me for a full-on interrogation. They wanted to know everything about Chloe, her height, weight, family background, personality, grades, and social life. At 11, after the dorm lights went out, I was huddled under my covers reading study materials when a message from Chloe popped up on my phone. When are you taking me out to eat? Seeing the message, I was a bit confused, trying to remember when I had promised to treat her to a meal. I couldn't recall, but I replied anyway. How about tomorrow at noon? What do you want to eat? Chloe replied instantly, I'm good with whatever you choose. The next day, after my 4 morning classes, I jogged all the way to the 3rd floor of the cafeteria. It was packed with students right after class, and nearly every food stall had a long line. Ethan, suddenly, a sweet, pleasant voice called out from behind me. I turned to see Chloe standing up and waving me over. I went and sat down, looking at the basket of soup dumplings on the table. You already bought food? Chloe replied calmly. I didn't have class for the last 2 periods. I looked at her, confused. But I thought I was treating you? Chloe picked up a dumpling with her chopsticks and chuckled. It's the thought that counts. I couldn't really let you pay. Before she could finish, I pushed a cup of bubble tea in front of her. I passed by the tea shop and grabbed this for you on the way. I said it like it was nothing. Chloe took the cup, her fingers tightening around it slightly. Taro jasmine milk tea, medium size, exactly her favorite. If I remembered correctly, that tea shop was pretty far from the men's dorms. It wasn't exactly on the way. Chloe took a sip. The smooth, rich taro paste at the bottom sent a sweet, warm sensation spreading through her, filling her heart. This is delicious. I raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing on my lips. Glad you like it. As Chloe's gaze slowly turned to me, I immediately looked down, pretending to be nonchalant. Chloe suddenly laughed and called my name softly. Ethan. My eyelid twitched, and I grunted, What are you laughing at? Resting her chin on her hand, she smiled and said, You know, you're really obvious when you sneak glances at people. I suddenly remembered what happened in the cafeteria the other day and changed the subject. Thanks for helping me out back there. Hearing that, a complex emotion flickered in Chloe's eyes. After a moment of thought, she smiled and said, If you really want to thank me, you can take me to the amusement park this weekend. I nodded with a smile. At the same time, a picture of the 2 of us was secretly taken by someone in a corner. In a dimly lit stairwell, a girl suddenly exclaimed in surprise, Oh my God, Isabella, look at this. Isabella's brow furrowed slightly as she stared at the girl with a blank expression. The girl scratched her head and explained, Ethan's eating with another girl again. The next second, with a loud crash, Isabella stopped walking, and the glass in her hand shattered on the floor. Clearly, she was in a terrible mood. Understanding the situation, the girl immediately zoomed in on the photo and held the phone out for her to see. My friend took this. Ethan is actually eating with another girl again. Isabella stared at the smile on my face in the photo, her eyes as cold as ice. Just then, another girl whispered, He already refused to join us before. I don't think he's coming back, is he? Hearing this, Isabella's face darkened, and her tone became icy and certain as she said, word by word, Impossible. Ethan likes me too much. He's chased me for years. He wouldn't just walk away. Tiffany, standing beside her, snorted contemptuously. It's just a tactic to play hard to get. Don't take it seriously. Your birthday is coming up, Isabella. When we don't invite him, he'll panic. Another girl agreed. Exactly. I overheard Ethan talking about a birthday present he was getting for you. A burst of derisive laughter followed. At these words, Isabella's tense brow slowly relaxed, the coldness in her eyes softening. She was confident that Ethan couldn't leave her. The next day, Sunday, sunlight dappled through the leaves, casting shifting shadows on the ground. The entrance to the amusement park was swarming with adults and children. Chloe looked around in wonder, taking in every sight with occasional gasps of delight. I walked up to her and asked, "What do you want to ride first?" Chloe paused, thought for a moment, then pointed to the nearest attraction. "Let's do the bumper cars, okay?" I nodded. "Sure." Chloe immediately picked a cream-colored bumper car, buckled her seatbelt, her heart thumping with excitement, her eyes shining with anticipation. With a ding, the ride started. Chloe gripped the steering wheel, carefully studying the accelerator, brake, and reverse, driving with extreme caution. Suddenly, with a loud bang, she was hit hard from behind. A little dazed, she turned to look at the culprit. It was me right behind her, giving a little wave. Chloe took a deep breath, puffed out her cheeks, and stomped on the accelerator. She spun the wheel, determined to get her revenge, but halfway through her turn, another bang sent her car lurching to the right. I had hit her from the side with a gentle nudge. Compared to the first hard crash, this one felt more like a playful tease. When she didn't react, I mischievously bumped her again. This time, it was less of a bump and more of a tap. Chloe's face was tense as she looked up at me, her voice tinged with a strange mix of frustration and pleading. "Ethan, stop hitting me." We spent the whole day there, going on almost every ride. That evening, in the most luxurious private room at Monarch Karaoke, the lights of a grand chandelier sparkled overhead. Isabella sat in the center of the room, listening to the loud singing, a wave of irritation washing over her until she finally snapped, "Everyone, shut up." The noisy room fell silent in an instant. The lively atmosphere vanished, and the temperature seemed to plummet, as if winter had suddenly arrived. Everyone looked at each other, afraid to even breathe. No one could figure out what was on Isabella's mind. The guest of honor was unhappy, so no one dared to speak. Her birthday party last year had been just like this, full of energy and fun. And while Miss Vance always appeared aloof, she had clearly been in a good mood then. Why was she acting so strange today? Compared to last year, everything was the same, except for one missing person. Just then, a girl tentatively spoke up, her voice cautious. "Should we maybe invite Ethan to come?" Everyone subtly watched Isabella's expression. At the suggestion, Isabella finally reacted, giving a slight nod. The girl immediately understood and started typing a message. Tiffany, however, was not pleased and snorted, "Isabella, Ethan is definitely just waiting for us to call him. If we do, we'll be falling right into his trap." Someone else chimed in, "Exactly. The more we ignore him, the more anxious he'll get." Isabella was silent for a moment, then shot them a cold glare. "Get him here." Only then did the girl hit send. The next second, her eyes flew open in disbelief as she stared at her phone screen, stammering, "Ethan? He actually." Tiffany crossed her legs, looking bored. "What?" Did he reply instantly? The girl shook her head, her face a picture of shock. "No, he blocked me." As soon as she said it, a thought seemed to occur to everyone, and they all pulled out their phones to contact me. "Whoa, he blocked me too. Why did he block me? I've never even spoken to him before." Without a doubt, it was a total wipeout. The only one left who hadn't tried to message me was Isabella. They all exchanged glances, a suspicion forming in their minds, though it seemed impossible. Even if Ethan had intentionally blocked them, he would never block Isabella. Isabella opened her phone and emotionlessly scrolled through her chat history, her beautiful eyes narrowing slightly. Almost all the messages were from me, but there weren't that many, and I never bothered her with trivial things. I was always cautious, maintaining a polite distance, afraid of disturbing her. Her replies, in contrast, were cold and robotic, devoid of any warmth. Usually it was just an okay, a period or no reply at all. Snapping out of her thoughts, Isabella frowned slightly, typed a single question mark into the chat box, and hit send. No matter what, Ethan had no right to block all of her friends the day before her birthday. It was completely unreasonable. But the next second, a red exclamation mark appeared, glaring and sharp, like a knife stabbing her in the eye. The message could not be delivered. He had blocked her. If he had only unfriended her, the notification would have been different. Isabella stared at the screen, her face dark, a crack appearing in her cool, proud facade. Seeing her reaction, everyone's heart sank in astonishment. No way, did Ethan actually have the guts to block Isabella? This was a risky, unprecedented move to get her attention. He must have gotten advice from an expert. In the dim light of the karaoke room, half of Isabella's face was cloaked in shadow, her eyes glinting with a cold light as she spoke, her voice like ice. Call him. Use an unknown number to call Ethan. Tiffany immediately pulled out her phone, then hesitated, looking troubled. I don't think any of us have his number saved. Isabella's voice was sharp as she recited a string of digits from memory. It was only after Tiffany dialed the number that everyone slowly realized just how well Isabella knew Ethan's phone number. Meanwhile, at the amusement park, I was waiting in line for the restroom. The queue was massive, even longer than the one for the roller coaster. Chloe was holding my phone, standing casually a short distance away. Just then, my phone started ringing. It was an unknown number. Chloe glanced down at it and didn't answer. Probably a spam call. But the phone kept ringing, again and again, insistently, as if it were an emergency that couldn't be ignored. Finally, Chloe swiped to answer. The next second, Tiffany's sharp, accusatory voice burst from the speaker. Ethan, you've got some nerve, blocking all of us. Hearing this, Chloe's beautiful eyes narrowed, her expression turning cool. Tiffany, what's with that tone? In the karaoke room, the call was on speaker. Chloe's voice filled the air, and everyone froze. Why was it Chloe again? Why was Chloe answering Ethan's phone? Isabella's face was grim as she snatched the phone, her voice exceptionally cold. Put Ethan on the phone. A 2-second silence hung in the air. Then, Chloe let out a soft laugh. Oh, what was that? Isabella repeated, word by word. Put Ethan on the phone. The next second, Chloe decisively hung up. Back in the room, no one dared to breathe, all of them lowering their heads. Isabella's eyes were dangerously cold. Ethan had blocked her, only to turn around and get this close to another woman. Tiffany, holding the phone, thought quickly. It sounded noisy on the call. They must be out somewhere. Should I try to find out what they're doing? Isabella forced a single word through her teeth. Go! 5 minutes later, Tiffany returned, shocked. Holy crap, I found out. They're at that new amusement park. Sensing that Isabella's mood had hit rock bottom, Tiffany's eyes darted around as she quickly added, I think Ethan is doing this on purpose, trying to act like he doesn't care. Besides, your real birthday is tomorrow. He won't be able to hold out. He'll definitely show up with a gift. Isabella lowered her gaze, her eyelid twitching. A sudden wave of panic washed over her, as if she were losing something precious. But no, why should she panic? The one who is loved holds all the power. Was Ethan just being petty, deliberately putting on a show with his childhood friend to test her? Isabella regained her composure, her expression turning blank as she said with certainty, he'll regret this. The others laughed and went back to singing, chiming in, haha, for sure, he's going to be kicking himself later. Tiffany slipped out to the restroom, a cold sneer on her face as she scoffed internally. She knew perfectly well that Isabella's attitude would only push Ethan further away. Who was that ice queen trying to impress, walking around with a sour face all day just because she came from a good family? She had to admit, Isabella was competent in many ways, but when it came to relationships, she was as dumb as a rock, like she had some kind of emotional disability. She always needed people to chase her, praise her, and coddle her. Wasn't that just asking for trouble? Tiffany snorted in disdain. Meanwhile, after I got out of the restroom, I saw a stall selling balloons. Chloe had been glancing at it on and off since we arrived, so I went over and bought one. When I got back to her, I handed her the sparkling, star-filled balloon. Chloe stood there, stunned. Is this for me? I nodded, gently took her hand, and tied the balloon's pretty string around her wrist. I pointed to a few little kids playing with balloons nearby and joked, see? That's how all the little kids do it. Chloe blinked, momentarily speechless, then mumbled, but I'm not a little kid anymore. She wiggled her wrist, and the balloon bobbed up and down, the glitter inside catching the light and scattering tiny sparkles. Just then, Chloe looked at me and mentioned casually, by the way, Isabella and her friends called you earlier. After she said it, her clear eyes watched me intently. I scratched my head calmly. I don't know what they wanted, but it probably wasn't anything good. Besides, I don't want to drag things out. I took my phone back and, without a second thought or any change in emotion, blocked the number that had just called. Seeing my reaction, Chloe couldn't help but smile. Come on, let's head back. By the time we got off the bus, the sky had grown dark, and we still had a short walk back to campus. Chloe looked a little tired, so I offered, I'll carry you. She looked at me and instinctively shook her head. No, it's fine. It's only a 10-minute walk. But I suddenly crouched down in front of her, a hint of playful stubbornness in my gesture. Chloe couldn't suppress a smile. She leaned down, poked my forehead, and said warmly, come on, let's go. I stayed put, looking up at her and said bluntly, then let me carry you. Chloe froze for a second. Was she imagining this? A thought seemed to cross my mind, and I raised an eyebrow. You used to ride on my back all the time. Or would you prefer I carry you in my arms? In your arms. Chloe remembered the walk out of the haunted house, and her ears grew hot, her knees feeling weak. Finally, with a sense of resignation, she gave in. Okay, your back is fine. After all, I used to be her personal steed. What was there to be embarrassed about? Having reasoned with herself, Chloe took a deep breath, climbed onto my back, and wrapped her arms around my neck, her body pressed against mine. I tensed for a moment as I stood up, adjusting to her weight. You're so light, too light. Through our thin layers of clothing, Chloe could feel the heat radiating from my body, seeping into her skin. It was so warm. Her heart felt a jolt of that heat, and it seemed like the temperature of the air around them had changed. Our breaths mingled, inseparable. With every step, we were pressed closer together, a sensation like 1,000 feathers tickling her skin. Leaning against my firm, broad back, Chloe felt a daze come over her and couldn't help but whisper in my ear, "You're so hard." I stopped dead in my tracks, wondering if I had heard her correctly. "What did you say?" Oblivious, she repeated herself, her voice sweet and clear in my ear. "Your back is so hard. It's kind of bony to hold on to, not very comfortable." I started walking again, carrying her on my back, and drew out my response in a long, knowing tone. "Oh." I hadn't said anything explicit, but it felt like I had said everything. Chloe's breath caught for a second, and a deep blush instantly spread across her cheeks. Her arms were tight around my neck, making it hard to breathe. I swallowed and couldn't help but say, "Chloe, are you trying to strangle me?" The girl on my back finally realized and slowly loosened her grip, her voice soft. "Oh, sorry." Her soft, fragrant body was pressed against my back in a way that was more intimate than ever before. I pressed my lips together, knowing such thoughts were wrong, and tried desperately to ignore the sensation. But the more you try to ignore something, the more you feel it. So soft. I started walking faster, my mind filled with images of fluffy clouds. Lying on my back, Chloe's gaze happened to fall on the tips of my ears, which were turning a faint red. "Ha!" As if she had discovered something fascinating, her eyes lit up, and she couldn't resist reaching out and lightly touching the base of my ear. The moment her fingertip made contact, it felt like a jolt of electricity shot through me, almost making me jump. I fought the urge to react and warned in a low voice, "What are you doing? Don't touch." Though it was a warning, there was no real anger in it. Chloe nodded obediently, staring at the back of my head as she said softly but seriously, "Ethan, your ears are really red." And they had gotten even redder since she touched them. I kept a straight face and lied, "I was born this way." Chloe paused, then let out a questioning "Oh." With my ears burning, I practically teleported to the school gate with her on my back, gently setting her down and steadying her. But the sparkling balloon tied to her wrist was incredibly eye-catching, and many students on the path turned to look at us, mistaking us for a couple showing off. I was exhausted after a full day out. I had just sat down in my dorm room when my phone rang unexpectedly. It was an unknown number. I answered, but the other end was silent, so I asked politely, "Hello? Who is this?" A frantic voice came from the other side. "Ethan, we're at Monarch Karaoke, room 18. The moment I heard Tiffany's voice, I hung up without letting her finish and immediately blocked the number. Then I plugged my phone in to charge and went to take a shower. On the other end of the line, the luxurious private room was deathly quiet. Tiffany looked at Isabella's frosty expression and tried to smooth things over. "If Ethan doesn't come, it's his loss. Does he really think we can't live without him?" Someone else added, "Exactly. He really overestimates his own importance." Isabella's voice was glacial. "Get out. All of you, get out." A glass hit the floor, shattering with a piercing sound. The entire room fell into a dead silence. Isabella was the heiress of the Vance family, the center of everyone's world. She always maintained a cool, calm demeanor, a flawless composure. Today was the first time she had ever lost her temper in public. Everyone took the hint and left, leaving Isabella alone in the room. She opened her chat history and quickly found the picture from her birthday last year, a handwritten birthday wish from me. But when she tried to open it, a system notification popped up. The image had expired. She stared blankly at the notification, a strange feeling welling up inside her as she murmured, "Expired." 10 minutes crawled by, and the clock ticked past midnight. Isabella opened her phone and scrolled through a long list of birthday wishes, but the one she was looking for wasn't there. She abruptly put her phone down, wrapped her arms around her knees, and curled into a ball on the floor. A hollow feeling filled her chest, and her perpetually cold voice trembled slightly. "Why do I still feel this way? I should be used to it by now." She was used to her parents being absent on her birthdays, used to being a tool for family alliances, a pawn in a loveless marriage arrangement, used to the fake flattery of her friends. But now, it felt as if she had lost the only genuine affection she had ever known. Isabella hugged her knees tighter. "He's not coming back. His childhood sweetheart has taken him away." At the mention of a childhood sweetheart, Isabella suddenly straightened up, stood, and looked at her slightly disheveled reflection in the mirror. She quickly composed herself, her expression returning to its usual calm. What was there for her to care about? It was he who couldn't leave her, Ethan who couldn't live without her. He would come back. The next day, Monday, was Isabella's birthday. College classes usually had open seating, but for the first 3 periods of her securities investment class, students had to sit according to their student ID numbers. Many people had already found out her exact seat from the campus social media page. Right now, her desk was overflowing with love letters and gifts, with even more flowers piled on the floor around it. It was an extravagant display. The girls in her class looked on with envy. The campus queen of Kingston truly was in a league of her own. However, when Isabella reached her desk, she began to unwrap the beautifully packaged gifts with a blank expression, her brow furrowing slightly as she read the names on the cards. Nothing, none of them. His card and his scarf weren't there. Isabella's face turned to ice. She looked at Tiffany, her voice low. Return all of this. Just like always, I'm not accepting anything. Tiffany sycophantically started gathering the items, rummaging through them, but she couldn't find my gift either. Damn it, how can he be so stubborn? Tiffany asked as she tidied up. What about the gifts with no name on them? Isabella's voice was flat. Throw them out. The girls gathered around, craning their necks to see the desk, their voices tinged with surprise. I definitely saw Ethan buy a scarf the other day. Wasn't it for Isabella? Not sensing the shift in mood, the girl continued. Oh, and I remember last year he gave her a watch for her birthday, right? It's hilarious. A cheap watch that probably cost a few $100. The nerve of him. The next second, the temperature around them seemed to drop, a sudden chill filling the air. Isabella's light-colored eyes were filled with an icy glare, her face visibly darkening as she stared at the girl, making her skin crawl. The girl quickly lowered her head. When the securities investment class ended, students began packing up their things. A handsome guy from the class took a deep breath, mustered his courage, and walked up to her, blushing as he confessed, Isabella, I like. But before he could finish, Isabella walked away with a face like thunder, clearly in a terrible mood and unwilling to stay a second longer. The boy's heart shattered on the spot. Tiffany hurried after her, trying to keep up. Isabella, where are we going? This isn't the way to the cafeteria. And from the look on her face, it seemed like she was on her way to confront someone. In the empty classroom, I sat at my desk studying for the collegiate English competition. All my classmates had already left, leaving me alone in the quiet room. After finishing a practice test, I slowly made my way downstairs, trying to decide what to have for lunch. As I rounded a corner, several shadows fell over me unexpectedly, like a dark cloud suddenly descending. I had a bad feeling. It was Isabella and her group of 3 or 4 friends, walking straight toward me. A chill ran down my spine. She was always like this, in this life and the last, always acting superior, never willing to say what she wanted, expecting everyone to chase after her and flatter her just to get a hint of a smile. I didn't even like her anymore, yet she kept showing up in front of me. As I walked past, I met her gaze calmly, my voice steady and even. Move. I would not repeat my past mistakes, would not follow her around like a pathetic shadow. 7 years in my past life, 2 years in this one, it was all just a joke. But Isabella didn't move, her eyes fixed on me with a sharp intensity. We stood there in a standoff, neither of us speaking. Tiffany, at her side, couldn't hold back any longer, her tone arrogant and dismissive. Ethan, why did you block us? You're not answering our calls either. What's your problem? I replied calmly. I already told you, I have nothing to do with you guys anymore. Isabella took a step forward, closing the distance between us until we were almost touching. She looked at me in disbelief. Who do you have nothing to do with? I couldn't be bothered with her and turned to leave. The next second, a hand grabbed my wrist. Isabella was a notorious germaphobe and hated physical contact. In my past life, I was always the one to initiate holding hands. She never touched me first. And now, she was grabbing my hand. Isabella took a deep breath and forced the words through her teeth. Ethan, stop being so ridiculous. In the next instant, another figure rushed over and slapped Isabella's hand away. Chloe stood there, looking at Isabella angrily. Stay away from him. Her lips were pressed into a tight line as she gripped my sleeve. Isabella shot Chloe a look, then turned and walked away. I looked at Chloe and asked softly, Hey, what are you doing here? Chloe looked at me and said, A classmate told me Isabella was coming to find you, so I hurried over. Then, she took my arm and said, Come on, let's get lunch. At the top of the stairs, Isabella stood silently, her expression dark. Tiffany spoke up beside her. Ethan's just being stubborn, trying to get a reaction out of us. After chasing you for so many years, there's no way he'd just walk away. Hearing this, Isabella's composure slowly returned, and she walked down the stairs with a blank face. Right, he's just being stubborn. As she said it, she remembered something I had told her before. Ethan didn't like Chloe. They could never be together. He had told her himself that he only saw Chloe as a sister he grew up with. He had also said that he only liked her, Isabella, and that he would only ever like her. So there was no need to chase after him. Once Ethan calmed down and thought things through, he would definitely come back to her. In a luxurious mansion nearby, Isabella lived alone. She preferred it to the dorms and had simply bought a house next to the university. All day, her face was a mask of ice, and she ordered all the servants out of the house. The staff left with their heads bowed, keenly aware that their young mistress was in an exceptionally foul mood. It was strange. She never usually showed her emotions, and besides, today was her birthday. In her room, Isabella's fists slowly clenched as the image of me with another woman's arm linked through mine replayed in her mind. He was definitely doing it on purpose, being stubborn, eating with that childhood friend of his, going to the amusement park. She didn't care. With that thought, she calmly opened her backpack. But the next second, her fingers froze, and she stood there, completely still. Tucked inside was a light brown scarf, the fabric soft and comfortable, like a warm ray of spring sunshine melting a glacier. There was no name or card, but Isabella was absolutely certain it was from me. When Tiffany found out, she got that "I knew it" look on her face and smiled. See? He couldn't hold out. He came running back with a gift after all. A classic case of playing hard to get. Isabella didn't say anything, but the anxiety in her chest finally settled. It made sense. Ethan liked her so much, of course he would give her a birthday present. The next morning, a sudden late autumn storm had passed through overnight, causing the temperature to drop sharply. Students all over campus were wearing warmer clothes. Isabella was wearing a scarf, a rare sight that made many girls swoon. She was already exquisitely beautiful, with a cool, distant air and pale skin, and the light brown scarf only enhanced her elegant appearance. Someone had already posted a photo on the campus forum. God, how can someone look that good just wearing a scarf? Is this the first time the campus queen has worn a scarf to school? I guess it's true that beautiful people look good in anything. At that moment, a boy stood frozen, rubbing his eyes as he stared at his phone in disbelief. The guy next to him was shocked. Whoa, isn't that the scarf you gave Isabella? The boy nodded. Yeah, I think I forgot to put my name on it. It was like $10 with free shipping. I just tossed it in with the other gifts, figured it would get thrown out. Maybe rich people get tired of their fancy designer stuff and want to try something cheap and rough for a change. At the same time, the girls surrounding Isabella stared in disbelief, their eyes wide with shock. They couldn't believe that Isabella would actually wear a scarf someone gave her. Had she lost her mind? The thing looked so cheap, like it cost $10 online. They wouldn't even use it as a cleaning rag. They had a million questions, but one look at Isabella's chilling gaze and they shut their mouths, not daring to ask a single one. Tiffany silently clenched her fist, then happened to spot a familiar figure outside the door. Her eyes lit up, and she suddenly spoke, her voice loud and cheerful. Ahem, Isabella, that scarf Ethan gave you is actually pretty nice. I wonder how much effort he put into it, giving it to you on your birthday just to make you happy. Isabella coolly lifted her eyelids, as if she had heard what she wanted to hear, and gave a soft grunt of acknowledgement. Just as she finished speaking, outside the nearby restroom, Chloe's steps faltered, and her body went rigid. She stood there, stunned and silent. She clenched her fists, trying to suppress the bitter feeling churning in her chest, but it was no use. The rain outside suddenly intensified, blanketing the entire campus in a heavy downpour. The splashing raindrops felt like icy shards hitting her heart. Chloe knew that Ethan only saw her as the little sister he grew up with. She knew how much he used to like Isabella. He would rest his chin on his hands and sneak glances at her, offer to tutor her in math, give her all sorts of gifts, and follow her around like a shadow, his eyes full of joy and hope. She knew all of this, knew it perfectly well. But what good did knowing do? She had no right to ask and certainly no right to be jealous. Chloe swallowed hard, her eyes downcast and filled with sadness, and turned to leave. She remembered what I had said on that rainy day. I don't like Isabella anymore. Thinking of this, Chloe closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and slowly calmed down. Knowing his personality, he would never give Isabella another gift. There had to be some kind of misunderstanding. She would find a way to ask him about it indirectly. Because she knew him, she trusted him. Outside, a light rain began to fall, creating a hazy mist and making the air feel damp. My third class in the afternoon was a university-wide elective, International Finance Analysis. It was a second semester course, and today was the first class. I had only signed up for it at the beginning of the year so I could be in the same class as Isabella. I sighed to myself and walked into the classroom just as the bell rang. The large lecture hall held about 100 people, and most of them were already there. Isabella and her friends were sitting in the front row, and they had deliberately left an empty seat. The moment I stepped through the door, all of their eyes were on me. Isabella casually lifted her gaze, trying to read some emotion on my face. But there was nothing. I didn't even glance in her direction, simply walking to a corner seat in the back row and sitting down quietly, as if I couldn't care less. Isabella's expression froze, and a sudden emptiness bloomed in her chest. The elective was a breeze, and most students were on their phones. The person next to me had been playing poker on their phone for the entire class. During the break, the professor took a slow sip of water and announced from the podium, "The final grade for this course will be based on a paper. The specific requirements are on the course website. You'll work in pairs, so please find a partner and fill out the sign-up sheet." The moment he finished speaking, a number of guys looked toward Isabella like a pack of wolves. The bolder ones had already approached her, politely asking if she had a partner. Without even looking up, Isabella gave a flat yes, sending the hopefuls away in disappointment. A few minutes passed, and the air around Isabella grew colder and colder, almost freezing. Tiffany gritted her teeth and whispered, "Don't worry, Ethan will definitely come over to ask you to be his partner." At her words, Isabella's expression finally softened a little. But she waited, and I never came. Isabella's patience was wearing thin. When she saw me smiling and talking to the student next to me, she couldn't take it anymore and abruptly stood up. I was chatting with a pre-med student sitting beside me. The next second, a tall, slender figure approached, cool and imposing like a snow-covered mountain. I had a strange, bad feeling and slowly looked up. Isabella stopped right next to my desk, standing very, very close. Her cold, sharp presence enveloped me. Under the watchful eyes of everyone in the room, her pale, glass-like eyes were fixed on me as she stood there in silence. Her intention was obvious. The other students craned their necks, eager for the drama, and the room erupted in whispers. Isabella was the most famous person on campus. Everyone knew the heiress from the Vance family. And the fact that I liked Isabella was also common knowledge. I had been following her around like a lackey since the first day of school. Countless guys liked Isabella, but who was she? She was the moon in the sky, the heiress of a top-tier family, someone completely unattainable for ordinary people. But this time, Isabella was the one approaching Ethan to be partners. How was that possible? Isabella stood before me, her expression cool. An unreadable emotion flickered in her beautiful, almond-shaped eyes. She reached up and deliberately adjusted the light brown scarf around her neck, then said, word by word, "Be my partner." Hearing her, I leaned back slightly, my expression calm, and without much hesitation, I shook my head and refused softly, "No, thank you." My voice was quiet and even, but every word was heard clearly by everyone in the room. He said no? How was that possible? Everyone was stunned, wishing they could get closer to hear every detail. Holy cow, this is insane. The moment I spoke, Isabella took a sharp step forward, a crack appearing in her aloof facade. Her face darkened as if she'd heard the world's most ridiculous joke, her voice turning even colder. "What did you say?" I subtly shifted away, creating more space between us, and repeated firmly, "No, thank you." After that, I looked away and didn't spare her another glance. The student next to me was gaping in astonishment, and the atmosphere in the room turned to ice. Isabella stood there, rigid, her face so dark it looked like it was about to shatter. The people around us were dumbfounded. Ethan had rejected Isabella, twice. It was unbelievable. A few dings signaled the start of class. Isabella let out a cold laugh. Composed and imposing, she exuded an intimidating aura as she turned to leave, tossing one last sentence over her shoulder. "Ethan, my patience has its limits." She returned to her seat with a dark, icy expression. Isabella's friends exchanged shocked glances. The guy who followed Isabella around every day had actually rejected her. How was that possible? He liked her so much, he had even worked his butt off to get into Kingston just for her. Wasn't he afraid of taking things too far? Isabella sat in her seat, half her face in shadow, her expression growing colder and more menacing, like a freezing winter storm that sent shivers down your spine. A girl next to her whispered cautiously, Isabella, don't be angry." Isabella shot her a chilling glare, a clear warning in her eyes. The girl broke into a sweat. Okay, you're not angry, I'm angry." A moment later, meeting Isabella's confused gaze, she scratched her head and continued, "It's just, if you order him to be your partner in such a cold, demanding way, of course he's going to resist." Hearing this, Isabella fell into thought, a flicker of uncertainty and conflict in her eyes. But after a moment, her stubbornness won out. Her gaze turned distant, her voice cold and certain. "He likes me. He'll come back." It was the light brown scarf that gave her this confidence. Ethan's heart and eyes were only for her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have secretly slipped a scarf into her bag. He cared about her birthday. He just wanted her to be the one to give in. Convinced of her own reasoning, Isabella's certainty grew. The girl beside her twitched her lips, feeling like she had just been talking to a brick wall. Even the girls who had been betting on Ethan's return were starting to have their doubts. Wasn't Isabella being a little too confident? And they couldn't shake the feeling that her confidence and composure were on the verge of shattering completely. In dorm room 307, Maya bounced over to Chloe, phone in hand, a mysterious look on her face. "Chloe, I just found some super juicy gossip on the campus forum. You want to hear it?" She happily popped a handful of ketchup chips into her mouth, looking smug. Chloe rarely paid attention to the forums and couldn't be bothered with gossip. But Maya's words caught the attention of the other two roommates, who begged her to spill the details. Maya, however, leaned in conspiratorially to Chloe and whispered, "You sure you're not interested? It's about Ethan." The next second, Chloe's head snapped around. Her lazy demeanor vanished in an instant. She looked up at Maya, her expression serious. "Tell me, now." Her reaction was so fast it was like she had a built-in radar. The moment she heard Ethan's name, alarm bells went off. Maya feigned surprise. "Whoa, what's this? I thought you didn't care about gossip." Someone gets awfully defensive when Ethan's name comes up. Chloe gritted her teeth. "Dinner is on me." Okay. Maya finally relented and began her story with dramatic flair. "So, in a finance elective just now, both Ethan and Isabella were there. The professor said the final paper had to be done in pairs, and they could choose their own partners. And guess what? Nobody saw it coming, but Isabella actually walked over and asked Ethan to be her partner in front of everyone. As soon as she finished, a shadow crossed Chloe's eyes, and her heart felt like it was being squeezed. A powerful, unidentifiable emotion churned in her chest, making it hard to breathe. And then what? Chloe's voice was calm, but if you listened closely, you could hear a slight tremor, a stark contrast to her usual carefree and laid-back demeanor. Maya didn't notice and continued enthusiastically, but Ethan was amazing this time. He turned her down twice. "I heard Isabella's face was so dark you could have squeezed ink from it. Ha ha ha." Every word Maya said was crystal clear. Chloe closed her eyes and slowly exhaled, releasing the tension in her body as she leaned back in her chair. The heavy weight that had been hanging over her heart finally lifted. Chloe didn't hear the rest of the conversation. The noisy chatter of her roommates faded into the background, as if she were in a different world. She lowered her gaze, pulled a well-worn journal from her drawer, and opened it to the first page. The paper had yellowed with age, and the ink had faded slightly, but the neat, elegant handwriting was still clear. "I'm waiting for a star to fall for me." The next second, her phone chimed with an iMessage from me. After reading the message, Chloe quickly put her journal away and hurried out of the room. Maya stared after her, confused. "Chloe, where are you going in such a rush?" The rain was coming down harder now, blurring the view outside the window. The heavy, rhythmic drumming was audible even through the glass. After messaging Chloe, my mood finally improved. Hearing Isabella's line about her patience having its limits just baffled me. I really wanted to crack open her head and ask, "Are you okay?" I sat there quietly, realizing that some things needed to be said clearly to avoid any more entanglement. When the bell rang for the end of the fourth period, I partnered up with a student I didn't know, we exchanged numbers, and I filled in our information on the sign-up sheet. Students gradually filed out, heading to the cafeteria or their dorms, and the classroom quickly emptied. Isabella had even sent Tiffany and her other friends away, leaving just the two of us. I slowly packed my bag. Isabella walked slowly toward me, her expression cool and distant, her eyes fixed on me as if she were waiting for a reasonable explanation. I zipped up my backpack. "Can I help you?" Isabella looked at me and said, "You and Chloe? It's not real, is it?" Hearing that, I tilted my head back calmly. "So, what does that have to do with you?" At my words, Isabella's expression turned to ice, a frost settling in her eyes. She looked at me as if I'd told a hilarious joke, her voice low and indignant. "Nothing to do with me?" I nodded decisively. "Right, Isabella, I don't like you anymore." I stated it as a simple fact, my eyes calm, feeling a sense of release, like I had just surfaced from the deep sea. Letting go of so many years of obsession wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. All those days of persistence, all those years of passion, how could Isabella not have known I liked her? She had always enjoyed the chase. She would decisively reject other guys, but she never rejected me. It was because of that special treatment that I had been so passionate. But the memories of my past life were like a bucket of ice water poured over my head, chilling me to the bone. The moment I finished speaking, Isabella froze, her breath catching in her throat as she struggled to process my words, almost doubting she had heard me correctly. "Doesn't like me anymore?" An indescribable feeling surged in her chest, a tight, churning sensation that made it hard to breathe. It was an emotion she had never felt before. After a few seconds, Isabella quickly regained her composure. Impossible. If he didn't like her, why would he go out of his way to give her a scarf on her birthday? Isabella's cold eyes darkened, her voice confident and certain. You're lying to me. You said you only liked me, that you would always like me. He had to be lying, but I didn't look like I was lying at all. I looked up at her, my tone serious. I'm not lying. I paused, then added, in fact, right now I think I kinda hate you. The word hate was like a sharp knife, plunging deep into the most vulnerable part of her heart, drawing blood. Her face darkened as she stepped toward me. The next second, a joyful light appeared in my eyes. I walked toward the classroom door, my steps light. You're finally here. Isabella turned her head stiffly. Chloe was smiling and waving at me. Let's go. The scene burned itself into Isabella's eyes. A storm of emotions raged in her mind. After a long moment, Isabella let out a cold laugh, her voice eerily calm as she said my name softly. Ethan. She rarely said my name, but in the past, all it took was a word, a beckoning finger, or even just a look, and I would instantly appear by her side, my eyes shining with a hope that seemed like it would never fade. But this time, I only walked away faster. In that instant, Isabella's cool, untouchable facade completely shattered, her feet feeling as heavy as lead. She stared blankly at the scene before her, a hollow feeling in her chest, as the beliefs she had held her entire life were shaken to their core. Chloe moved closer and took my hand. We walked away without looking back, watching our figures disappear, pressed close together. Isabella had never imagined her emotions could be so volatile. She yelled after us, Ethan, if you walk away with her, don't you ever come back. I didn't even pause, just squeezed Chloe's hand tighter and said calmly, without turning around, okay. As we left the building, the rain was pouring down, and the damp wind hit my face, yet my chest felt lighter than it ever had before. Chloe tilted her head to look at me, her fingers tightening around mine. You're really not going back? I looked down and met her eyes, then suddenly smiled. I never had a home to go back to in the first place. Chasing after her was my own foolish mistake. But things are different now. How are they different? I looked at her, my heart beating erratically against the rhythm of the rain, and after a moment, I said, now, I have someone waiting for me. Chloe froze for a second, and the tips of her ears slowly turned red. After that day, the campus was in an uproar. No one could believe I had actually turned my back on the most popular girl in school. But the real drama was yet to come. The next morning, as I was walking toward the academic building, Isabella blocked my path. She was wearing that light brown scarf, standing in the middle of the crowd, her pale face expressionless, but her eyes held a brewing storm. Ethan, she stared at me, you already gave me the gift. How long are you going to keep this up? I was stunned for a second, then looked at the scarf around her neck and almost laughed. You mean this? You didn't give it to me? A crowd had already gathered, and Tiffany and her friends stood with their arms crossed, looking smug. My expression was calm. No, I've never given you a scarf. Tiffany immediately raised her voice. Stop pretending. You definitely. I did buy a gift, I interrupted her, but I threw it away the day I decided to give up. As for this one, I glanced at the pilling on the edge of the scarf and said flatly, the workmanship is shoddy, the threads aren't even trimmed, it looks like it cost $10 with free shipping. The air went still for a moment, and right at that moment, a guy carrying books walked by, overheard, and stopped dead in his tracks, his expression turning to one of horror. Wait, hold on, that scarf? I think I'm the one who gave it to her. The crowd fell into a dead silence. The guy's face turned bright red as he forced himself to add, I just tossed it in with the other gifts on her birthday, forgot to write my name, and yeah, it was $10 with free shipping. Someone in the crowd couldn't hold it in anymore and burst out laughing. Tiffany stood frozen, her face alternating between pale and flushed, and for the first time, Isabella's composure completely shattered, as if the final layer of her self-deception had been publicly torn to shreds. I didn't look at her again and walked right past, but I knew this wasn't over. Sure enough, 3 days after the scarf incident, just after Leo and I submitted our application to the university's startup incubator, we started hitting roadblocks. The office space we had arranged was suddenly delayed, an alumni investor backed out at the last minute, and an anonymous company even put out the word that anyone who worked with our project would be making an enemy of the Vance family. I sat on the top floor of the science building, watching the dark clouds gather over the city, when a sharp, stabbing pain shot through my head. Fragmented images from my past life flooded my mind. Severed partnerships, a smashed computer, headlights tailing me late at night, cold rain, and the sound of a voice screaming my name as I lay in a pool of my own blood. The pain was so intense I could barely stand. The next second, a pair of arms wrapped around me from behind. A familiar, Sweet scent enveloped me, and Chloe's voice, though trembling, was soft and steady. "Ethan, don't be afraid. I won't let you go through this alone again." I froze completely, then slowly turned to face her. Rain hammered against the window, a relentless drumming. Her eyes were red, but she was desperately holding back tears. "You!" She looked at me and, word by word, finally laid bare the secret she had carried for 2 lifetimes. "I remember too, saving you a seat in the cafeteria, giving you my pudding, eating with you, taking you to the amusement park. None of it was a coincidence. I'm just like you. I came back from our past life too." My throat went dry, and I couldn't speak. "So that line from my dream, you were never a speck of dust. You are the brightest, most brilliant star. It wasn't a hallucination. It was her. It had always been her." Chloe's tears finally fell. "After that car crash in our past life, we reconnected. You finally let go of Isabella and we got together. We were only happy for a short time before the Vance family came after you. She wouldn't let go. You refused her. So her family started to crush you, destroying your career, blocking every path you took. And that final, so-called accident." Her voice broke, and her hand, clutching my sleeve, was shaking. "When I got there, you were covered in blood. My eyes burned, and my heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. All the blurry, indistinct parts of my past life suddenly clicked into place. What happened after? After," she gave a bitter smile. "After, I was just an empty shell. And then, I didn't want to live anymore." In the rainy night, I pulled her into my arms. I held her so tightly. She cried in my arms, and I was shaking too. I wasn't the only one trapped in the past. She had been carrying the pain of 2 lifetimes, waiting for me all alone for so long. "I'm sorry," my voice was hoarse, "for making you wait so long." Chloe buried her face in my chest and whispered, "Then don't you ever leave me again." "I won't." I bent down and kissed the top of her head. "This time, it's my turn to run to you." After that night, we stopped guessing and second-guessing, like 2 hearts that had been adrift for too long, finally pieced back together perfectly. I organized all my memories from my past life about industry trends, technological developments, and market opportunities, and officially started a company with Leo and Adrian. Leo might have seemed unreliable, but he was a lightning-fast coder. Adrian handled operations during the day and did live tarot readings at night, which surprisingly took off, earning him the title of Mystic Master at Kingston and bringing a lot of attention to our company. I was in charge of the core technology and product framework, while Chloe became our steadfast support. She didn't pursue a career on stage like in her past life, but instead followed her true passion, studying design, building our brand, refining the user interface, and creating all our visual assets. Our company's first logo, the first version of our website, even the entire presentation for our funding pitch, she crafted every single detail. She always said, "You focus on charging ahead, and I'll make sure the whole world sees you." I knew that behind those words was the protection she had offered me across 2 lifetimes. The Vance family made their move earlier and more ruthlessly than in our past life. But this time, I wasn't the unprepared Ethan of before. I proactively contacted all the partners they had suppressed, the startups they had pushed out, and the companies whose projects they had maliciously stolen in our past life. With evidence of the Vance family's illegal competition, shady deals, tax evasion, and illicit transfers, I launched a counterattack. Julian had also started his own project by then. I hadn't missed the way he looked at Chloe on the basketball court, but he only seriously pursued her once, and she turned him down flat, right in front of me. He was graceful about it, just extending a hand to me with a smile. Losing to the childhood sweetheart, I can't complain. He later became one of my few clean and honorable competitors in the industry. Later, the Vance family scandals were fully exposed. Their stock plummeted, their projects were halted, and the glamorous facade of the once powerful family crumbled. Without her backing, Tiffany's family's donation for admission scandal was uncovered, making it impossible for her to stay at Kingston, and she quietly transferred schools. As for Isabella, she came to find me one evening when it wasn't raining. She had lost a lot of weight and stood in front of my office building, stripped of her former arrogant certainty. "Ethan," she looked at me, her voice soft. I realized later that what I was obsessed with wasn't love. I didn't say anything. She lowered her eyes. It was pride, a need for control. I was so used to you always being there, waiting for me, that I couldn't accept it when you turned away. She paused for a long time, as if finally admitting a truth she had been unwilling to face. "I lost." "You didn't lose to me," I said calmly. "You finally saw yourself clearly." She gave me one last look, her eyes no longer icy, just filled with a hollow exhaustion. Not long after, I heard she had gone abroad alone. Not for an arranged marriage, not to escape, but for the first time to live her own life, free from the Vance family name. And my life, step by step, had finally moved into the light. In our senior year, our company became a rising star in the industry. As I stood on stage at a press conference, bathed in spotlights, I suddenly remembered the boy from long ago who thought he was nothing but dust. In the front row, Chloe was looking up at me, smiling. In that moment, I understood that I really could become a star. After graduation, Leo met a cute girl at a mixer who loved gaming and was just as sarcastic as he was. They argued constantly and ended up being the first of us to get married. Adrian remained an early partner in the company while his online divination studio grew, becoming so popular that his appointment book was filled a month in advance. On holidays, he would insist on doing a daily kiss forecast for Chloe and me. As for Chloe and me, we went from childhood sweethearts to partners in battle, to the one and only answer in each other's lives, and finally, to our wedding day. At a seaside chapel, the wind was gentle, and the sunlight fell on her white veil like scattered gold. When Chloe walked toward me in the wedding dress she had designed herself, my eyes instantly welled up. She stood before me, like the moonlight that had finally come to rest after all the chaos of my 2 lifetimes. As we exchanged rings, I held her hand, my voice trembling. In our last life, I spent my whole life chasing a false light, while you gave your life for this tarnished star. This life, it's my turn to run toward you, my moon. You were never my second choice. You are my only destiny. Tears streamed down Chloe's face, but she was still smiling at me through them. She squeezed my hand gently, her voice sweet and firm. I was waiting for a star to fall for me. I waited for 2 lifetimes, and now I finally have. Outside the chapel, the waves crashed, and applause and cheers erupted. As I leaned down to kiss her, I suddenly felt that fate hadn't been so cruel to me after all. It had made me walk a long, winding path, suffer so much, lose and miss so much. But in the end, it gave her back to me. From now on, I would no longer chase after anyone's shadow, because my moon was already by my side for the rest of our lives.